So I want to say at Philip that in some of the manuals is written Hareinu Mikasha Naran Sheli Chaye Echidem Naran Shel Adonenu Marinu V'Rabbeinu V'Kol HaShosheles V'Kol HaChsidus, that whatever is of Ruach HaKodesh that needs to come through at this time should come through, and that we be good kalim for that. Say Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
I'd like to begin with a little family background of yourself. I understand that you come from Chassidim. I know that when you came to America, you lived in Borough Park. If you could talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
All right. My Zayde, Zichram Lebracha, Yeshua Dov HaKoyen Graf, was the chief Schachter in Ushpitzin in Galicia. He was a Belzer Chosid, and given Chosid beim Belzer. The Rosvadover Rebbe is given,
English.
The Rosvadover Rebbe was one of the people who wanted him very much to be his Chosid, and they would spend long Friday night Shmis Chassidus. That's what they called it. And my Baba Alei Shalom was also from Belzer Chassidim, and her father, Reb Chaim Yosef, was a Balshachis in Belz Yom Naroim.
The author of...
Yes, it's all right. I look at you, I feel I want to talk Yiddish.
I know.
So he made a number of beautiful melodies for use, and they still know him in Belz. And when I came to Yerushalayim to look up at the big shul, first they looked at me, I was dressed in business clothes. What are you doing over here? And then I started to talk to them in their kind of Yiddish. And all of a sudden, they were very happy to show me around when I started to sing some of the Nigunim. And then they said, this one we use for Hakofis and this and that. And so I was in.
Yes.
So that's that side of the family. The other side of the family was in Zholkve.
The other side meaning
my mother's
your mother's side.
Yeah, was in Zholkve. And Zholkve is the town where the second printing of the Tanya took place.
Yes.
And I have a copy of that here.
Of the actual Tanya.
Yeah, and that has the old Igeres Atshuva, which I have scanned and can give you a file with that, okay? So now we continue. These were also Belzer Hasidim, and on the my Zayda side was the son of Reb Moshe Yagit, who was a great London and wrote the Machzis HaShekel on Eben HaEzer, and Dayonim are looking to get copies of that book. So he was great. So that's my family. My father didn't want to be that kind of a hot Belzer Chosid, but he was in Ratzfeld during the First World War, when the Belzerov was there, Rabbi Yeshua Dovyet, and so on. So many family stories about that. He lived in Vienna, we lived in Vienna, and I grew up there until 1938, and when we had to make our way. But in Vienna was where the Rebbe would come to Purkersdorf, and that's how I got hold of a German translation of that letter that I was mentioning to you before, where the Rebbe was writing for people, in which way could German Jewish intellectuals gain something out of Chabad? And he wrote that amazing letter.
The Rebbe Rayatz.
The Rebbe Rayatz.
Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak, yeah.
So then...
that's 1938.
Yeah. I came to Belgium, and there I met some people that would be a very long and beautiful story who they were. Their mashpia was a Talmud of Rav Tzilzon and of Rav Avrom Schneerson from Kishinev.
Kishinev. Rav Avrom Schneerson was the Rebbe Tzemach Tate.
Yeah, he was
the father.
The Shver
of the... Right.
So, and their line was not pure Lubavitch, it was more Kopusht.
Yeah.
And so on. But these young people impressed me greatly, because I too had questions about Tchias HaMesim, Olam Habe, just the way people were talking about Gan Eden and Gehenna made me feel that this is nonsense.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 15 at that time.
Now, you learned to the Cheder until then? You learned to the Cheder?
No. Before that, I went to gymnasium
Yeah.
in the morning and to yeshiva, an English yeshiva in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I had both sides. The gymnasium was Leva Zionist, and I would go Shabbos afternoon early to Brit Bila, which is sort of a Shemer Tzayir, dance the horror there, and for Shalashudas, so it was with Pircha Gudas Yisrael. So I had this big thing.
And you were a good Talmud when in learning. You enjoyed learning then when you were in the Cheder.
It always was what. It was the what. So, for instance, when someone put the Mesilas Yesharim in my hand, and he said, Yesod ha'avodah v'shorish, Yesod v'shorish ha'avodah atmima yishis barer v'yis amis is lo'odom ma'chevosa ba'elomah. Aha! I opened my eyes, how wonderful that is. And that there is a pathway to go from being careful to being zealous about things to being pure until you could even reach such a thing as Holy Spirit, Ruach HaKodesh. That was an amazing thing. But these people were also learning Tanya. But they didn't let me into the shir.
They were learning Tanya?
Yeah, they were learning Tanya.
These people in Belgium you're talking about now?
Because their teacher, Moshe Tchechoval, Zichron Levrocha, was the Talmud of Rav Tzilson.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a mashgiach at the yeshiva in Haida. It was a regular Litvish yeshiva. He was a mashgiach in Besmedrish, but he also had a shir, Chassidus Tanya.
Mm-hmm.
And the people would make fun of him, and they would say, the Lernstchen Torah Moshe, because the Gerach Sidim weren't too happy that people should learn Tanya. There was always that kind of tension. So continue, please.
So this was in Belgium. From there,
yeah. So
what year did you come to America?
Just not so fast.
Not so fast.
The German,
so they didn't let you into the Tanya shir when you were 15 or 16
right.
at the time.
So I hid out in the bathroom next door to be able to listen in. Someone had to go to the bathroom, and they gave me a mashkante because they wanted me to be really serious first with the Mesilas Yesharim. Nicht as you don't let everybody in.
Right.
And so, since the longing that was in me was very great, and I would sneak a Tanya off the shelf and try and learn myself. In Memvov, this kapitel where the Alter Rebbe talks about the king who takes the poor man. Oh yeah, I fell in love with the Rebbeinu Shalom at that point. It was remarkable.
Remarkable words.
So then, and the capacity that everybody could be a Beinani, it's in my control.
Midas kol adam.
What I can let in, what I cannot let into my mind. This was wonderful. But the Germans bombed, and we had to flee, and I was in the Vichy side, Baruch Hashem, so that the Germans didn't take us. We were in 2 concentration camps for refugees. We came out, and I was in Marseille. And that in Marseille, I first met Zalman Schneerson, who came in one Shabbos afternoon, and my Yiddish was always Galiciana Yiddish.
Yeah.
And here he sits down with his a kappelish, like the Rebbe Rayas used to wear too,
Mm-hmm.
and one leg under, one of his legs wasn't working well under his, and he started to sing a niggin, which I still remember in use for Yale. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Beautiful niggin.
Yeah.
And then he began, Yairiv kamotor likhi, tizol katalim rossi. And I still remember how he said it, and I hung on every word.
A mimer.
A mimer. It was a mimer of the Likutei Torah.
Yeah.
I walked him to his hotel and asked him, we are Bochrim here, and we don't have anyone to learn with us. And he got us Zilberstein, Chaim Meir.
Yes.
To be, he was an older Bocher from the yeshiva, and he learned with us Ksubis.
Mm-hmm.
He told us that, it'll happen. They didn't say Tu B'Shvat, Chamshosa, yeah, it's gonna come, and I can't be with you. I have to be in Vichy. I'll send you a guest. In the meantime, I would see somebody who was dressed in business clothes with a gray suit, a very dignified young man, and I didn't see him talk a lot with people there, but there was a Chacham from Algeria with whom he sat and learned. And in my mind, I thought of him as the Moroccan. So all of a sudden, Tu B'Shvat, the Moroccan comes in and says, "Was lernt ihr?" And we tell him that we are studying Ksubis, and we had some fruit and some schnapps, and he take the fruit, the schnapps, said L'chaim, and then begins to lay out for us what does it mean that a young woman is to be married on Tuesday, on the third day of the week, and started to right away saying, what does it mean about days of the week? Because 6,000 years is the world, 2,000 is wild and woolly, 2,000 is Torah, 2,000 is days of Mashiach. Now I'm going to make a footnote. I didn't really feel, if I were to ask what is the basis of my soul's attention,
gravitation,
is not to the past. It's always to the next thing, to the future.
Your own Shifa.
That's my own, really. I want to say that my, as if I'm made that way. Yeah? So, it's for this reason that when someone was saying that there is a flow to history, and it's not all homogeneous, as it were, he had me.
Mm-hmm.
And I repeated that teaching many times to other people.
I heard.
And it was very important to me. I still didn't know who he was. We got to the United States.
Oh, so you didn't know at the time he's the son-in-law of the Rebbe?
Nothing. But this is a great guy.
And you didn't know his name? Did you know his name?
No, nothing. They didn't talk about. If I had heard Shteerson, do you think I would have left him alone? I would have brought that old Tanya that I got and said, teach me,
Right.
And he would have done it too, So, but I didn't know. So then we got to New York, and I wanted to see the Rebbe, and I was at the Hayas, and I walked all the way to St. John's Place, and I didn't know anything, just come off the boat.
What year are you talking about now?
This is now 1940.
What month, do you remember?
It was around, it was Aachen Shel Pesach, Shvi Shel Pesach, Aachen Shel Pesach. I started to walk, and I didn't make it, and walked all the way back to Manhattan.
You walked to the 770 or wherever?
Yes, because I'd known about 770 Eastern Parkway. It was already you know about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but then my friend Avram Weingarten, who was part of the group in Belgium,
yes,
got me to talk to Rav Simpson, and and he told me who that man was, the Moroccan was. So he says, you can get in to see the Rebbe and give regards from his son-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is before he came to America.
That's what he was still in France at that time.
Right, 1940.
Yeah. So I got into Yechidus at that time. Rav Simpson was with me because I still, to be able to hear what the Rebbe was saying. He had my whole life in front of him in a few minutes, and then he started to fix up my brother into Yeshiva Torah Semes, my sisters.
Torah Semes in Borough
Park, right? And my sisters in Shulamit's school, because Rebbetzin Rifkin was there in charge, and he found us with Yudel Eber some work in fur, because I'd learned how to be a furrier.
Which Yudel Eber?
There was one Eber across the street of 770.
Ah, not the Yudel Eber that Rosh Yeshiva passed away in the Holocaust, no.
No, but he was the one who had a fur business, so he gave us some work to do, and that's how we started to have parnasa. And we had our
You and your father.
yeah, and the shop, my mother too, and the shop was one room in our home in Borough Park over 13 on 13th Avenue and 53rd Street.
Shemus Shabbos is the shul.
Shemus Shabbos on Shitzfalt, right?
Yes.
And we were on the 3rd floor of that place.
You were on the 3rd floor of that building.
Yeah, and I had a key to the Bais Midrash, and the kind of davening I did at Marif there when nobody else was there was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. You know about that shul today?
Well, who's got the show?
The shul is still the Anshe Sfard.
Yeah.
But it's the minion factory. I think it's even bigger. It has more minyanim than even Yerushalayim and Bnei Brak, the minion factory. It's non-stop minyanim in that shul. And the 3rd floor that you say you lived at today, they made a base medrash there. You come in,
wonderful.
Lenin, coffee, mezainis, Onkengeld, just to learn in your apartment. If you're telling me you lived there, it's not what there is today.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And as soon as I could, when my parents were able to do the business, I went to the yeshiva. Before that, I would come every Wednesday night to hear Rav Chodakov give a shir in Chayvas Halvavis. And that was also wonderful because, you see, we got into Chassidus and nobody ever taught us how to learn a shtickle Zohar. So how, we hear Kisvei Arizal, but we never saw, everybody says that how Tzimtzum took place and so on and so forth, but we never saw it direct this way, so that was hard. I had 1 hour while I was in the yeshiva, in the Bais Midrash, that was sort of a free, you could do what you, and I was doing Shar Bletlach.
Shar Bletlach.
I opened up Sforim and looked what's in them, who wrote them.
The title page.
Yeah, thank you. And also the table of contents, so that I would have an idea who was writing it and what was it all about. And then I was able to choose in my free time whom I want to read.
This is when you were in the yeshiva.
Yeah.
So
and Reishes Chochma was one of those that I grabbed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you started in 1941 in the Lubavitch yeshiva?
Yeah.
And so you were about 17 or 18, 17, right? And you were full-time student or you still working?
No, full-time. By that time it was full-time.
Full-time.
Rav Mentlick. First I was with Rav Zalman
Gurari,
then Rav Mentlick. And there was Rav Jacobson was the first mashpia and Rav Shmuel was the second one.
Mm-hmm. Who were you closest to from the mashpia and Rosh Hashivas?
That's hard to say because I had the room next to the toilet. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. What do you mean you had the room? You lived there?
Yes. That was my...
That was your dormitory room?
That's right.
In 770?
In 770. And my job was to lock the door and to open it in the morning.
You mean of 770?
In 770, yes.
That was your job?
That was my job. And Reb Shmuel, when he needed someone to go to the grocery store for him and buy him something, I was the shaliach. So in this way, Reb Shmuel and I
bonded.
Had something. But it was Rav Jacobson who was wonderful. Chassidim would say he was abrasive to my sides, gerieben de Seiten, in which he was. But he also was remarkable. And I want to say, we called him Jakey, of course. And every time it was, when there was a particular holiday...
Again with the Pagda.
Yes, I didn't want to say that word.
Yeah, fine. Sometimes you say it in English, sometimes I say it.
So Mentlick would not let us out of the shir. But we would sneak out.
You mean to go to the Fabrengen?
To go to Fabrengen, someplace in Flatbush and so on. Mm-hmm. And the schnapps that we had was bathtub schnapps, samahonke.
What is samahonke?
From potatoes. Made in the bath, in a bathtub.
Right.
Like the shamus, and you'd go and you fill up a bottle, and the government didn't get any taxes from it,
Right.
And so we each brought our bottle. Jakey didn't want us to eat much.
Because of his skafia? Because of his skafia? What do you mean didn't want you to eat much?
No, not at the time of Verbringen. Mashkin is a behemekode mashchita. He always wanted to make sure that we would really get out of our normal mind into something better. So then he could talk Yoda Inish Benafsha, everybody knows, has his own flaw, and he would begin to talk about Pneumius, Chetzonius. He would begin to talk about personal qualities and how to improve them, and he would tell us amazing stories and sing nigunim. And when I would sing, I remember one night we were singing Reb Michael's Lotchavas Nigun, and I was just so crying the whole time because the sense of tshuva was yet before I knew about the Baal Shem Tov saying that he's going to be there when you sing this nigun.
Right.
And later on, when I was in Fall River, and I was working with young people and teaching them nigunim, there was a problem. People would sing the nigunim, but what would they be thinking about? You know, they didn't know how to fill it.
Content.
So I made some words. And I showed them to the Rebbe Nachum Mendel.
Yeah.
I showed him these words, and I had made 4 nigunim. And on 3 he was maskim, and on the 4th one he said, Shebe nicht mit den alten Rebben.
Don't start up with the Alter Rebbe. 1 second, but you put words to known Chabad nigunim.
That's right.
Right. You didn't compose the nigun itself.
No.
Right.
So, for instance, if you have the Hachona nigun,
yes.
You know that one before the Rebbe begins. For the sake of my soul, I search for a goal, and I find no other than you. O Lord, you find satisfaction in my mitzvah action when thy light in the Torah I see. Oh, grant me the awareness of your precious nearness. In your presence, O Lord, I long to be. Help me in my start to make pure my heart, and all in the end will turn out well. Oh Lord, so many years have gone by in great waste, till of your wondrous sweetness you have granted me a taste. Teach me, please, and reach me, and show to me, and grant to me your grace. And last, it doesn't go. Until the day on which I may see your holy face. I'll give you later on the words to these 3 nigunim.
Amazing. So you made the 4.
Yeah.
What year was this? Do you have any recollection? Roughly.
Yeah, I was in 51, 52, but soon after the seal. I had a whole geschäft with him before, and I had a geschäft with him afterwards. I used to bring Hillel directors to him, and after the Stalkos, when I came, I want to tell that one.
Yeah. So continue.
So I was crying when we were singing that nigun, because it was very clear to me that these nigunim were wordless prayers. When people would speak of the gaguim, the longing, and I had the sense that when I met other yeshiva bochurim from other places, they didn't have any gaguim. You know, there wasn't that sense of, I want to reach to this, and to me this was very important.
Right.
Davening, whatever I could learn about davening, I just was into davening. There's a place when you go up from the basement on 770, the back stairs that would lead to where the Rebbe's room was.
Yeah.
And there's a locked door.
Yes.
That was my hiding place to daven.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I would go, and I would daven there. And Shabbos afternoon, I would prepare before Shabbos a can of sardines, a couple of challahs, and something to drink. And at 4 o'clock I made Kiddush because I was into davening b'arichus. I mean, for me, this was so clear, the story. A father who's a peasant. I heard this from Chodakov. The father is a peasant. The son is a shepherd, and he loves music. And the two of them sit in a restaurant. Finally, they manage to sell the cattle and this and that, so he is there with his son in the restaurant. He orders a steak. And he says, "Oi, the steak is a machaya." In the meantime, there's a band playing, and the son is with the band. Oh, the music is a machaya. The father says, "Why don't you let the steak go?" He says, "Father, the music is a machaya." Both of them are looking at a guy who sits there with a philosophy book, and they say, "Zeno does spell. He doesn't eat, or he doesn't eat to the music." And the guy says, "Oh, this is a machaya." Then the three of them are walking out, and they're walking by a shtibele, and inside there's a yid daven and saying, "Ve'ata machaya."
Very good, very good. You heard this from Chodakov?
Huh?
You heard this from Chodakov?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a powerful story. I never heard that before. It's a good story.
So you get the idea. If you were to say, what was Nigla was what I had to pay my dues with, you know.
Right, the study of Talmud, right.
But Chassidus was.
And was in your eyes, who was a bigger davener, Rabbi Jacobson or Rabbi Shmuel Witten? if you remember that, like, who impressed you more?
The strange thing is, I was never there when Jacobson. Not never. I would go to his shul. He had a shul in East New York.
Right.
I would go to his house to learn Samach Vov and Echoltzu and stuff like that, because he's my morim weren't there, and he still had memories of the Rebbe Rashab.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell us about how he had a mashpia Gronim, yeah?
Shmuel Gronim.
Shmuel Gronim. He had another mashpia by the name of Hendel.
Hendel Lieberman.
Yeah.
Is a nomen nach the Hendel.
Right. And so,
Nach Hendel, a chosid the Tzemach Tzedek.
And he, people would say, a schwerzach bam Tanya. Yeah, it's not
Swears
so
by the
much,
Tanya.
not so much that he explains things, but the sense you get that everything that you read there is really so.
Mm-hmm.
That was very important.
So you're mentioning. Also, you were saying that you didn't see Rabbi Jacobson really daven.
Davening, yeah.
Yeah.
But when he would talk about Chassidus, and he would talk about his bonanus, he was very much into his bonanus. And there were times when he was saying to us at a Farbrengen, Machne Yisrael is fine, but don't forget there's a Machne Kehuna, and you have to be for Machne Kehuna. In other words, there's a work that you do with other people outside, and that's important. And we used to knock on doors and get kids to go to the release time instructions and do all that. That's how we built the yeshivas in Bridgeport and New Haven and Springfield and so on, Worcester.
But Reb Shmuel himself lived in 770.
Yes.
So I imagine you saw him daven.
Him I saw. But I never saw in him, how would I say, something that would be going to ecstatic expression. Mm-hmm. He would go with the towels over his head, and he hardly ever stood still. He always walked when he was davening.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget where he was. He had been imprisoned. He had been all that stuff. He was deep into the davening, but he didn't share much what's going on. And that brings me to a story. Because when I was in yeshiva one night, Rav Jacobson, Avram Paris, and Rav Shmuel are sitting at the table and Bochrim around. And Rav Shmuel is saying, the Bochrim don't really daven. What's the matter with the Bochrim? They don't daven. He didn't say it in English. And I said to him, I took first a glass of schnapps, a tumbler like this, drank it down, then I said, what do you have? Why are you angry at us? You never told us what's going on inside of you when you daven. So he looked at me and said, what kind of a chutzpah that is? And I keep on saying, listen, this is Torah and I need to learn. What's the whole point? If I'll never be able to daven if I don't know what's doing inside of you. So he turns to Jacobson and says, He's in your kitta. You tell him. So Jacobson says, all these years, and he would just sputter, all these like this. I was working hard on daven, and he wants me to tell it while he's standing on one foot, and I say, Ken, that's true. That's exactly your darn tootin', you know. And he is angry, and Rabbi Avram Paris says, is doch fortgerecht. After all, he is right, if you don't tell him. So they say, you open your mouth, you have to tell him.
Mm-hmm.
So Rabbi Avram Paris begins to share from Modani up to Gol Yisrael what's going on. I wish someone would hypnotize me that I would be able to remember it verbatim, but I was so absorbed this. It's in my cells what he said. He came to the Amida, to the Shemoneh Esrei. He said, Ad Khan, up to here I can take you. The rest of it is just between God and me. So it was a wonderful Verbringen at that point. But these are the things that interested me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Now, did your Chavedim, did your friends respect you for your, at that time, for your davening and your strong interest in his abundance and meditation and the Hasidus? In other words, what was the atmosphere like in the Beis Medrash?
It depends who. Peretz Hecht, you know, and Popak.
Shmuel Isaac.
Not Shmuel Isaac.
Oh, the other one, Abraham, whatever his name is.
The younger one, yes.
Yeah.
We were good chaverim. We learned together, and with them I didn't have trouble. Sholem Gordon was always fun to hang out with and to talk, and he knew how to take the most serious thing and make it into humor, and that was great. Herschel Schusterman was always like
Proper.
A noble person, you know, moichendike person. Avram Barnetsky and I wish I forgot some of the other names.
Like Kolodny.
Kolodny, right? All these were wonderful people, and so then when Rabbi Avram Elia Axelrod would come in from Baltimore, we would sneak away to have a Verbringen with him because he was just wonderful. If I had to really pour out my heart to someone, I would go to him.
Not Rabbi Jacobson, not Rabbi Avram Paris, but Dafka to him.
Because Jacobson would right away start telling me what I was doing wrong.
Right.
Okay. Reb Shmuel wouldn't even have hasoge what's eating me, you know.
It's bothering you, right?
So it was. He was the kind of person I would have come to.
I've written about him. I'm going to leave you my book. I've written extensively about Avram Elia Axelrod because from the stories that I've heard about him, it seems to me that even amongst his chavedim and Israel, that he in Avodas Hashem, it seems to me he stood out amongst all of them.
Yeah.
Am I right in my assumption?
That's how I feel it. Tovshin Gimel, that's 43, Simchas Torah. Reb Shmuel Levitton, Reb Yochanan Gordon, and he were dancing, holding each other by the beard like this. And it was wonderful. And Reb Avram Elia was talking about Basukes Teshvu, how that which surrounds us over our head has to come down into us. And Reb Yochanan Gordon says, Tanz, sag nicht, kann ich see this, now it's with the legs, not with the head.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful. I have good memories of that time.
Mm-hmm. The reason I asked you that question, by the way, because I heard, and now that I'm talking to you directly, I want to know if this is the case. What I heard is that there were some in the Beis Medrash at the time that were giving you a hard time about your davening. Is what I heard correct?
It is correct, yes. And about other things, you know. I went and bought a second-hand shirtuk.
When? Then? As a bocher.
As a bocher.
You bought a second-hand kaftan.
Kaftan, yes, that's right.
And you wanted to start wearing it.
For Shabbos, big the Shabbos, why not, you know?
Okay. And the bocher and your friends criticized you.
Of course, you know.
Okay. Then there was in 46 when the Polish Bochurim came, Rabbi Reichik,
Yeah.
Shmuel David Reichik. Did
Yeah.
you have a relationship with them, or you already were out?
No, earlier yet.
Rabbi Weinberg, they came, and Mendel Tenenbaum.
When they came, it was Reb Menachem Greenglass,
Yeah.
who was my friend. Because he also was a davener.
Uh-huh.
Menachem Zev.
Nachum
Greenglass.
Zev, yeah.
And he wrote me some very nice letters. And at one point I was saying, why is it that here in 770 we don't get that stuff? So he wrote back, "Warum dem Yam ist drucken?" Around the sea sometimes there's sand and it's not so juicy there.
So you're saying that you felt that what I'm hearing is that you felt then that you're not getting in 770.
Yeah.
Although you had all these Hasidim and people, and
Yeah.
you felt kind of lacking. You felt that something's not being disclosed to you. Is that correct? That they're holding something back?
No, that I didn't feel. I didn't feel that. But don't forget, people were easy to give bitushim. To really give you
Criticism.
dig you criticism and dig you and so on and so forth. It's like and say rough stuff at you because that was part of how we talked to each other.
Right.
We were not polite, Rabbi so and so.
Yeah, right.
So we gave each other a hard time. That wasn't the problem. The problem was, look, I would always, there's something that, two things were my problem. One was, I'm a Galiciana.
Okay, so you were an outsider.
That already a little bit suspicious with the Polish shtick,
Okay.
Okay. That's number one. And I would sometimes, when the Bobova came to there, I would sometimes go to the Bobova's tish.
But that's already later, in the 40s.
Later, I'm saying, no, later. I
Later.
would come in
You're
from,
jumping to later.
yeah, and would go to his tish because something was warm and attracting me there too. But when I wanted to find out from somebody, tell me, how do you do Kriyat Shema Shalamita? How do you do the examination of conscience before you go to sleep? And so on and so forth. These are the kind of conversations that I didn't get too many people, I didn't get maybe a little bit with Avraham Weingarten, but not many others who were willing to talk about the inner work.
Mm-hmm. Why was that? Why? They felt that you weren't ready?
No, that wasn't the problem. That wasn't the problem. The problem was I have a feeling that there's something that happens when you are in a certain environment and you pick up the vibe of the environment. And the vibe of the environment was pro-davening. But, so that everybody davened. I mean, the people were not julikas, they were not fools. They really invested time. And we would speak about the distinctions between davening behisorus, an awakened davening, and davening be'arichus, which is a whole other more meditative form of davening. And we had conversations about these things. It wasn't. But when you talk about going inside your own feelings, for this you need to have a good friend, and only with a good friend can you talk about that. That was more absent in the Bes Medrash for me.
Mm-hmm. And so, what type of discussions did you have with Rabbi Avraham Eli Axelrad?
I didn't. But my feeling was that if I had to, he wasn't. He didn't.
He wasn't. He just came
He
once in a while.
But the Verbringens were wonderful. Yisrael Oltein, I hear he's gone. Yisrael Oltein was a person with whom I could talk about Neshama Sachen. Yeah.
His older brother was older than you.
Mottel was the Adam, yes, by Jacobson.
And he already left yeshiva early.
Yeah, he was no longer there. Mm-hmm. And of course, Shloime was in Chicago by that time. Shloime Hecht.
Yeah.
Shloime Hecht. Moshe Hecht came later to New Haven. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Rabbi Mentlick. Did you have a relationship with Rabbi Mentlick?
Well,
any interesting stories or thoughts?
He was a good teacher. And there's certain traits that he had. He couldn't really get angry. And usually people say redheads are angry people. Once he had to be angry with us. So he turned around to the bank of books and then turned around to us and made an angry face and really let us have for not spending time in a foolish way. And then his face broke and says, "Did I scare you?" Jetzt hat erschrocken. He was such a wonderful person. And the thing that we would always really in our heart keep wishing him that he should have children. He never didn't.
Yeah.
It was Moshe Yitzchak, his brother-in-law.
Moshe Pinchas Katz.
Moshe Pinchas Katz. With him, I had a sense of an older brother, like.
Really?
Yeah. He once came to New Haven, and he told me, was our guest for Shabbos. And so we don't sing Zmiris, you know, just the those that are the Ria Kodeshes that
Right.
you make. So he says, don't do that. His father-in-law was
Stockenheimer.
And he is the one that the Rebbe Ayaz so much loved. He's the only one who dared to sit with a Streimel at the Rebbe's dish. And when he would sing Lo Moyim Meri Hagoyim, that song, it was wonderful. And then it was adopted that the Kachenu Mitzvah Sechel was also his.
Which Kachenu Mitzvah Sechel?
I'm trying to remember the tune.
Tune.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier that you composed words for 4 nigunim.
Yeah.
And you said that you showed it to the Rebbe, and he said, "Heb sich Neshama mit dem Alten Rebbe."
Right, that was the one that was...
You took the Alten Rebbe's niggin.
No. Go away, you know. That I wouldn't have shepherd to begin with.
You even though that one you don't start off with.
For that you need to have another way, but it was the Avinu Malkeinu. As I sit and hear by praying, my heart to you these words are saying. Something like that.
Beautiful.
So he says Shepherd mit Malten Reben. But the Nigen am Yuchas La Baal Shem, as I sit and I think, I remember my heavenly home. As I sit, you know that Nigen?
Yes.
And then when it came to Reb Michal Zlotcheva's Nigen, I took the words of the Bosiligani, because, verstehst doch, because the Baal Shem said that he would be there when we are singing, and the Rebbe left us this mimer. I came to my garden from beyond time and space to meet my bride, my beloved, at our own very special meeting place, for not the angels of heaven above, but you souls I love. So verstehst du that this has something to do with the mimer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, it makes me act like a fool, so the Ruach Shtus comes in, and all that.
Mm-hmm. So you've recorded these 4. You've recorded them.
I have recordings of that. Yes.
What about there was a Talmud, a student, Mottel Fisher. Do you remember him? No, he was a friend of Avram Hecht's. No, okay. Rabbi Weinberg, you had Shachas with...
Sure, Yosel Weinberg was always his Yiddish classes on Tanya on the radio.
Yeah, but I'm asking the yeshiva in the 40s.
Yeah, I didn't have much to do with him. Mendel Tenenbaum a little bit more, but mostly it was, I stayed in touch when I would come to Montreal. I would hang out with Menachem Zev Greenglass.
Uh-huh.
Reichik, you know, he was, talk about a davener.
He was a big davener.
See? That's immediately I told you, yes. Reichik was a whole other thing. But he was doing it in such a way that you couldn't know what's going on in him either.
Right, that's true. Right. I don't know if you're aware, you probably are. I think it was in Tufshin Ches, 1948.
Yeah.
it's printed in the Sichos. Rabbi Jacobson, Rabbi Shmuel, and maybe another one or two came down from the Rebbe, and they were oismensch. They were not by themselves, and they said that the Rebbe said, "There was David nicht, hat nicht kein business verbringen."
Wow.
It's printed already. The Rebbe hat sich angesagt. You know, I mean, for them on their level, you know, and she wanted from them a higher level of Avodas Hashem.
Yeah, yeah.
So I heard that they turned around and sat upstairs in the Zal and they saw Shmuel David Reitschik, and they said, "Shmuel David, du das verbringen, weil du davenst."
So that was wonderful. He had a way, Shmuel. I couldn't wake a woman because he came from Momje. I mean, this Polish expression. So you really had to listen sharp to understand what he was saying. But a good house. He was a very, very good-hearted person.
Okay, so if someone would have asked you when you were in yeshiva those years, you were a Lubavitch, you felt yourself as a full-fledged Lubavitcher Bocher.
Yes, of course.
Without any questions.
There were no questions about it. In my mind, it was like all the other Chassidim are Kigelfresser.
You really had that feeling.
I had that notion. I mean, what do they do? Nicht gedaven, nicht gelernt. You know, what is it that they have? You could go listen to a Rebbe and you can sing songs and you can have sharaim. But in what is their chassidus? That was because I didn't understand much either, you know.
Okay, but you still gravitated later to the Bolivar. I mean, you know
that came later. But also it was the time of the three Kol Koires.
You mean with the Alta L'Geula, Alta L'Tshuva?
Yeah.
What do you mean the three? What
there
you refer?
Were four Kol Koires. And that was a time that learn Mishnayos Bahart Gobi purify the air in the city, and we would stick labels on the subway and everything.
I heard about that.
But the trouble was nobody else understood what this is all about. And one of my friends was arrested by police for defacing property. And we all envied him for sitting in jail.
He actually was in jail?
Yes, he was in jail.
Your friend from Weingarten?
Avram Monheit.
Avram Monheit,
Yeah, he was in jail for one night, and we envied him for having had the schus for the Rebbe's Inyan to be...
So you were amongst the Bachrim who ran around putting up these zettlach.
And
these
getting
papers.
kids into going to the Wednesday hour, having lots of fun. That tells me the instructor, put that skull cap on. Oh, put that skull cap on. There was something, put that pistol down. There was a song about that. Yeah.
You were a good friend of Yankel Hecht's.
Yankel, it was a different story. Yankel was very much the person who wanted to make sure, at that point I had a disdain for the world. Yeah. But Yankel wanted very much that the world should respect Chabad. That was his. If you saw the way his talk was, the way he would translate the Rebbe's things, the way he was the one who wanted to make sure that the average person from the world would respect Chabad.
What do you mean you had a disdain for the world? In other words, you came to the feeling of bittul hayesh and
no.
No, that's not what you're referring to.
No, not this way. But why should I bother to try and convince other people, you know, when I can spend the time and daven and learn and tracht noch Chassidus, you know, this is how I felt while I was in yeshiva. But there was something else, a wonderful incident. We didn't have certain maimorim around. In those days, very little was printed in a shop.
Printed, you mean
in
printing
a
press?
printing place. Most of the stuff, the maimorim, were typed out by Rabbi von Paris on his typewriter with a cigarette in his mouth. And when he made a mistake, the Rebbe said it was a good mistake. Ampin mispardin with an ayin instead of with an aleph, you know. He said it was a good mistake. So where do we get these maimorim that they always were saying, oh, this maimor, this maimor, this maimor. So I would borrow them from Jakey, And at that time, I was no longer on 770. I was across the street. There was another dormitory.
749?
Yeah. And
No, 667, whatever.
it was.
Yeah.
And they also had an office, a yeshiva office there. So one day, Rav Moshe Pinchas Katz sends me out to open up the office for the secretary. And I go to the locksmith, and I make a key, and then I open up for the secretary. And every night I sneak in to the office and roll out the Hebrew typewriter and put in a Gestetner stencil and start typing.
You start typing?
Yes, Hecholzu and stuff like that.
And you had to do this clandestinely? I mean,
That's right. That's right.
Because it was Avram Pariz's job and no one else?
No, because that wasn't, they weren't, it was just, what right have I got to go into the yeshiva office?
Okay.
Sneaking in.
Right.
So my muzzle is that one day I'm moving the machine back, and the machine falls off that little table and breaks the carriage. I try and put it together, the secretary comes in, it's broken, and then an investigation happens. Finally, one of the kids in the youth were in the same dormitory, told him it was I. So I'm sitting and learning, and a phone call comes in at the end of the hall where the telephone was, and Zalman Schachter, you have to come up to the office of Dan Holle. Now, Mentlick, what was the name of the other Rosh Yeshiva?
Rabbi Pekarsky?
Huh?
Rabbi Gutesman?
No.
Rabbi Pekarsky?
No. He's one of the signers of my smicha, so I'm sorry, I forgot. And Rav Shmuel and Jacobson, and of course Rashag. And what right have you got? This is the Rebbe's territory. Nobody has a right. And and they give me the thing. I say, Rabbi Isai, give me 2 minutes. I'll be right back. I run down and I take from the mimeograph stuff, the Hecholzu and another mimer, I forgot what it was, and put a few of these together for each one to have. And I come up and I hand them out to these things. So they start saying, this is, and right away I was okay. But I had to pay for the breaking of the typewriter, which was $35, which I didn't have because Reb Shmuel one comes in one day on Purim, and he says, where do I give Matonis Lev Yonim to the poor? And somebody says, how about the Bocher? Right, because we were the right people for that. But so I paid it off by teaching Meir Greenberg's classes from time to time. So that paid off for the typewriter. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get access to the typewriter again.
Mm-hmm. Why did you make a certain face when you mentioned the Rashag?
Because I liked him a lot, mind you. I don't have, but at this point he had to be the guy with the accuser, you know.
Mm-hmm. You had a relationship with the Rashag? You had the conversation with him?
Yes, I liked him because he would Erev Shabbos he would Chazer a Maimer.
Erev Shabbos?
Erev Shabbos, just before, you know.
Before Kabbalah Shabbos,
before
Friday
Kabbalah
night.
Shabbos, yeah.
Okay, and you used to sit in and listen?
Yes, and I could ask him questions I didn't understand. What does the word nimus mean? And he would explain to me in German, because that's my language, Anstand. Once I asked him a Klotzkasche, it was in Toshin Gimel, when the Maimorim were, that on Shabbos, Malchus, Chitzonis HaMalchus, goes up to Pnimis HaMalchus.
Yes.
On Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah, Pnimis HaMalchus goes up to Malchus the Ein Sof. What happens Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah? Who minds the store? You know?
Okay.
You have to, the world, right? The world has to be taken care of. So I asked this question to Rashag, and he explains to me. If on Shabbos, Ma'achitzaynis HaMalchus goes to Pnimis HaMalchus, so it's in Pnimis HaMalchus taken care of as well. Pnimis HaMalchus goes to Malchus Ein Sof. There were little things of that sort. And he loved to say, Lule his mamanu aloishavnu pamayim, or something how the pasuk goes. He loved to say that if we only would be more on the ball, we could have done tshuva twice already at this point. He loved that. He loved to sing b'mashmanenu Al Yerozen, you know. And when he was davening at the Yomid, he had a very nice nusach for the Shemona Esrei repetition when he had Yortzeit and so on. So I liked him this way, but they were so different, the two brothers-in-law. It's not.
Were you witness to that period when I've heard that there was a tense period when the Rebbe passed on, the Rebbe Rayatz, and the transition, and the family wanted this. Were you involved then, or not really? But were you aware of it?
You got. Let me tell it in my way, okay? Okay. From time to time, the Rebbe, now I'm talking, who was known as the Ramash.
The Ramash, yeah.
Would see me, ask me, because when he came in, by the way, I stopped telling you the story. So later on, when the Rebbe said, the Rebbe Rayatz said to me, and what did he say? So I started to repeat a little bit of that. So sometimes he made like this with his head, nicht also in Ganzen, you know, but he didn't criticize me. When the Rebbe came to America, he first would daven with his talis over a hat. And there was always the geschäft, we would whisper about the 4 pairs of tefillin that he put on and so on and so forth. So
in other words, who are you to put on 4 pairs of tefillin?
No, that wasn't it.
No, that wasn't it.
No, nobody.
Oh, it wasn't an accusation.
No, but did you know the thing? Like that.
Right, okay.
And, yeah. So he would see me, and I was working on the 84 fast days.
You took upon yourself the what it says in Tanya.
If you learn Tanya, you got to do it. So he said to me, "You're fasting, don't." So he saw me, you know, and
by the way, did you listen?
Huh?
Did you listen?
Listen, I finished fasting. It goes very easy to listen. Yeah, when it came to during the Tahara,
the Rebbe Rayatz.
I was standing outside, not too far from him, and Rashag, and they were saying Tehillim, while there was a shamus from Chaim Berlin, who was known as a good Rebbe Kadisha person, and well respected, and he was doing the Tahara for the Rebbe, with a few people inside. And every once in a while, when he had a question, he would come out, and whom do you think he asked?
Ramash.
That's right. And it was it was clear, it wasn't an issue. My wife gave birth to a child, and while she was still, she asked for ether. While she was on the ether...
What year is this?
This was at 3 days after the Histalkos.
Oh, your first child was born 3 days after the Histalkos.
Yeah. What's his name? Yankel Hecht had a boy before the Histalkos, but the Histalkos was before the bris, so he was Zeicher with the first years of Yitzchak. I was the second one.
Oh, his name is Yosef Yitzchak.
Yeah, and the Rebbe I appeared to her and said, "You should let know in New York." And she said, "Whom?" And she saw him making the letters Reish Mem Shin.
Again. Well, one second. This is the Rayatz told her? I'm not following this.
Yes, she sees while she is...
she saw her, had a vision.
Yes.
And he's Reish Mem Shin. Okay, I understand the story.
And she came out of that and was crying and was saying, "How was I worthy to be able to have that vision?"
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I come back to New York Purim, and I'm going...
Where were you, by the way, at this time? Where were you? In New Haven?
In Fall River, Massachusetts.
When did you leave from New Haven to Fall River?
That's a whole other story,
okay.
But let's go to this.
Yeah.
So I'm washing my hands, after I come from the oil, from the grave of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe was standing there still wearing the gray suit and the fedora. And he asked me, you were at the Ohel, so that I was washing my hands. And he said, you were at the Ohel. And I said, yes. And so he said, so the Rebbe should help, may God help that whatever you prayed for should be fulfilled. And I said, if people will not interfere. He said, what do you mean? And I said, I prayed for three things. I prayed that we should have a Rebbe, that you should be the Rebbe, and you should be blessed with children. He held my hand at that time, and we both were crying. And he said, but what difference does it make whether he's in this world or the other world?
What difference does it make?
Does it make in which world the Rebbe is? The Rebbe is always here.
Yes.
And I got back at him with a kotzka vote, and I said, if the Rebbeinu Shalom would have wanted that, he wouldn't have taken Moshe Rabbeinu and hid him so no one could go. This way, Yeshua couldn't send him out to the oil. He had to be Rebbe himself. So he said, sein good. And that was the Purim after the Istalko. So there was, that whole year, all kinds of things were happening about the Shtreimel and so. I'm not interested in that stuff. So then later on, when I got my job in to take my courses in Boston University for my MA, and then got my job in Manitoba, and the Rebbe gave me always a broche for that. Was also a professor there, and he said, "Nu, soll ich der Eberste helfen mit der Professur?" That's how he said it. And I would send him copies, carbon copies, of letters that I was writing to people about spiritual things. And he would send back the carbon copy with notes that he made there.
You have copies of those still?
You won't get them from me. So don't even ask, you know. Don't think about it, yeah. So, but this was wonderful, because I was able to learn this way, you know, what was important. There were times I didn't agree with him. One letter was about evolution, because I had written to this young woman who said, what about evolution? And I said, was heißt evolution? We are always talking about, say, the Ishtalshalus, you know, and this is not the first world, and so on, so on. Okay with evolution. I got back, no, I shouldn't have said it. So I waited when I was in Yechidus, and I said, why not? Chassidus always talks about these things, why should we not say it? He says it's about Shabbos. You have to watch out, because it's important to have Shabbos. So at which point to say 6 days of 24 hours each, and this is what makes up for Shabbos in this world, I couldn't even then agree to that this is so, you know.
I'm not following his response. What does Shabbos have to do with evolution?
Because if you say that there hasn't been Maaseh Bereshis this way,
so then Shabbos falls aside.
Yeah.
I understand.
But ich has nicht geschämt.
Right.
You know, there were some times when I would say, he would chide me about something, and I would say, this Orthodox politics. You know? Or one point, there was a Verbringen in a Rosh Chodesh, and Shabbos Mevorchim.
Yeah.
And from 7 o'clock in the morning, and this is now 2:30 in the afternoon, and he says, und das ist die Meise von, and all the people started to rear up to hear the Meise, and he says, ihr pufft, Meises wird der Herrn, you know, you sleep and you want to hear Meises. He was sitting with his back to a big wide window at that time.
Upstairs, yeah.
It was downstairs, but in the big...
Oh, the shalash over in the garage.
Yeah. By that time, they had already built that, and there was a big window behind him. And so I write him a letter, and I say, sometimes you need to be doing some apologia for the Hasidim. You sit with your back lit high. People try and see your face when you're speaking. When we concentrate on you, the pupils open up. When the pupils open up, the light comes in, the pupil closed down. Open up, close down, people fall asleep. And by the way, it's been going on for so many hours and people haven't been home with their families. Why are you angry with them? And if you want to make a tikkun, you make sure that this window is going to be covered.
You wrote this in a letter.
Yes. I wasn't. Listen, I wrote him once a whole thing about why I wanted to have a little walk-in place on Wall Street, sort of a little shtibele, besmedrish, chainik for tea, and so that people could get some counseling after they'd been to 770, because at that time 770 wasn't so clean and still not so clean. So I wanted to do that, and I wrote a whole protocol on that. Avram Weingarten and I were the ones who started Mesiva Shabbos first. I mean, we've been working at that. So, and he said it wasn't the right time yet. But now when you look Chabad houses all over, so it's an amazing thing.
What year roughly was this request of yours?
61, 62.
61, 62. I want to go back, if I haven't finished with the Friedrich this time. I understand you had a lot of Yechidus, and like you had more than once a year, actual Yechidus with the Friedrich Rebbe?
I can't say the numbers of that, but, I would come in for...
And also, how did you get in? I understand Bochurim students, they almost never let in, I was told. Was it you had a special...
I was already a younger man at that time. I was already in Manitoba.
Well, I'm talking about the 1940s. I'm not talking about the 1950s.
1940?
With the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz.
That was easy if you had a good reason. For instance, I had to go Stellenzach. You had to go for army
right.
things.
At
what point my father had thrown me out of the house because he wasn't happy that I should go in the street and catch little kids to bring him to Rav Simpson's house for Mesiva Shabbos. He says, I don't want you to be a belfer. So, a belfer, how wonderful. The Baal Shem given a bel. I want to be a belfer, So he didn't want me to be a belfer, and then he said, out of the house. So I schlepped a couple of orange boxes with my Sforim on the subway, the BMT to the IRT, and come to 770 and tell Rav Simpson that my father threw me out of the house, and so I want to go in to see the Rebbe. So he said, "Your father, no? What do you mean he threw you out of the house?" So I said, "No, you see, he doesn't want me to do Mesiva Shabbos stuff." So he says, "You go right back and tell him, Azir geheißen, I asked you to apologize to him." And then I said, "So what should I do next Shabbos?" He says, "You'll go again and get the kids." So I come home about it's 2 o'clock in the morning, geschleppt, the subway goes slow at that time. And I knock on the door, and my father comes in his night outfit and looks at me like this, and I say, "The Rebbe told me that I should apologize to you, so I apologize to you." So he's a kliger Yid, a smart Jew, and he let me in. Next Shabbos, he sees me go out again, and he says, "This he also told you?" And then he says, "The paskudne Litvak." So I mean, these you wanted to have personal stuff. This is personal stuff.
Well, that's good. This is. But it seems like you had. Would you say you more than maybe most other of your friends had more of an open relationship with the Rebbe Rayatz during your yeshiva years? Is that a true statement?
Yes, I think that's true, because Jakey once told me that I should go and say that an Eitzah from the Rebbe because I'm a chitzon. So
say that in English.
because
you're superficial.
That I'm superficial.
So you should go see the Rebbe for Neitza, for advice, for a ticket, whatever.
So I come in, and he says to me so beautifully, in every country I'm making her, Yeder Medina, it has its own expressions. America has an expression. It is, take it easy. If you want to take it, you got to do it easy. It isn't yet a problem for you. You have still much to go before this becomes your problem. So that was one wonderful thing that was there.
And he told us to Rabbi Jacobson.
Yes, and
but he treat but when he spoke to you, you felt like he's like a. You felt his love. You felt. I understand. You were enamored with him.
Any word you're going to say is going to be inadequate. Take a look. The year that he was saying Kaddish for his mother, and
1942,
and he was at the door to the Yechidas room, to that little room, and we were in the little room davening, and when he was at the Omid, and he would go, ומלמד לפש בינו חוננו מתחכמו בינו ודעת ברוך אתה השם חיינן הדעת. You know,
Mamash, you remember the
Tnuah, you know, that so. Look, one of the things I want to say that the young people should also hear, but you don't learn davening from a book. You learn davening from a davener. And I love the story when Chana, his daughter, was helping him with the tefillin, and she showed him the mirror so he should see the tefillin are in the right place. And he said, Otos bin a davener. That's who I am. I'm a davener, you know. And when you look at the nights, Rosh Hashanah nights.
You were there, Rosh Hashanah nights.
Oh, the tears.
The tears.
The hours, you know. Motel Oltein got one of the handkerchiefs that was all wet from the Rebbe's tears. It was a remarkable time. So obviously that's how it was, that you felt, you sit you were with the Rebbe, and he goes, Yom Mom, and you see his face at that time, and what do I want? I want to feel what he feels. You know, I make myself a vessel to experience, to attune to him. And that's the word I want to say. If anybody wants to learn how to daven, find a davener, and then attune, which means ask your body, how is his body doing? What is his body doing? Ask yourself, how is he breathing? Ask yourself, what's the heart stuff that's going on? Ask yourself, on what level is his mind operating at this point? I'll show you something that I wrote. It is a symphonic arrangement for the first bracha of the Amidah. What you have to take care of, because that was my special gift that I always wanted to find out. How do you do it, and what's happening inside, and how to be makne, how to share with other people, so they should be able to get to it themselves. So it should come from inside out, not from outside in.
As you know, the Chabad system of meditation, of Visboneness, is very much avodas hamoyach.
Not when you do Adat the Nafshe.
And I'm not saying it remains avodas hamoyach.
Yeah.
Were you engaged at that time in avodas hamoyach as well?
Of course. You know, listen, when you learn a mimer, here, Avram Paris would learn with me Shabbos mornings. When I wasn't at the yeshiva, I would be with my parents in Borough Park. So I'd go over to, 6 I was at the mikveh, and by 6:30, 6:45, Avram Paris would learn with me. So
And Rabbi Simpson Shul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He learned with me a mimer, and I'll soon remember the title of the mimer. But the content of the mimer was to talk about the koyach hamafli lases, that this amazing property of the miraculous order of things. Whew, and time is gone. I may have to soon stop, but I don't care. Let's go on as long as I can. So, the miraculous order of things. It is 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm on my way home, or maybe later, and there's a big tree there, a big elm tree, I think it was. And I stood in front of that elm tree and looked at this koyach hamafli lases in the elm tree, how underneath the bark there is so much life from below, and the carbon oxide is going into the leaves and comes down, and all this is so much full of chayas, and Mentlick Alman is in that tree, and I stood in front of that tree for about a half hour or longer. So it's not, when you learn a mimer, it's not just to be able to repeat what the mimer says, but when it says something about whichever level it's talking about, what's memale, what's seviv, what's spheres, and so on and so forth, it's really important to, you see, the Riyah Kodesh makes it very clear, and the Alter Rebbe in the Tanya says the same thing, he makes it very clear that all this is just an excuse to be able to talk about it. But what's really going on is much deeper and doesn't even get into words. The words are just poor ways of stammering about the realities that are underneath there. So, when, in the beginning you have to learn the words. You have to know that Bria is always over. Yetzirah, you have to know all these things. But then after a while you have to know, what does Yetzirah feel like inside, and what does Bria feel like inside. So when you say Avodas HaMoichin, and you get there after you've done Bichas HaShachar and you've gotten into your body, and then you go in Sukkot Zimra, and you go Nishmas, Kol Chai, a whole thing, and Nishmas you can spend hours on. And then when you come to Bichas Kriyat Shema, and you see Malachim and Srofim, and then you look L'keil borch nimes yitin l'melech zamir ki hu levadai morem v'kodesh poil yivuras oisach adoch balmachom v'zriyas matvir, and you follow the Seder Ishtalshalas, the order of devolution there, and you see this in the world, and you look at the Alfanim, and you see those are the planets, and you look at the Chayas HaKodesh, and you see the signs of the zodiac, the Ari and the Nesher and all these, Pnei Shor, etc. And then you look at the galaxies and the Srofim. So you have a whole thing. Adonai Olam Hashamalach B'terem Kol Yasir Nivro. Go, wow, yeah. Leis Nasa B'chefetz HaKoel Azai Melech Shemay Nikro. So the present of Hashem is from the Big Bang to the last black hole. That's his now. The was before that. And it's all going to be gone. And there's nobody there to give him a mashal, to tell him a nice mashal, to be his friend. These are the kinds of things that you do with the davening, because you want the devotional thing to say, Rebbeinu Shalom, I want to bring you a present of my awareness and of my being with you and my focusing. You and I are talking about the Rebbeinu Shalom, but the Rebbeinu Shalom is here.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep saying to people when we have these conversations that this conversation is being monitored by quality purposes. So this is where Chassidus is important.
Okay. Did you have any of these type of discussions with either the Rebbe Rayatz or the Rebbe, the Ramash, or do you never? Your davening feelings and issues and questions.
Yes.
Did you discuss it with them at all, or you didn't?
With the Rebbe Ramash, I was able to do some of it, but by that time I was a sergeant in the army. I would have to give reports and how is it with this person and what have you done with that person. You know how it goes with the maskirim.
Yes.
So it was this way. But I also, then I said, I want to ask you something about Ruchnius, but I don't know what the question is.
You said I don't know what the question
Yeah.
is.
So you tell me. And he would say, Zaim Ava Sedre in Likutei Torah, then you'll know what to ask.
Uh-huh. Okay, now,
He's getting footage that the other guys never got.
well, this because, this is the way I interview, and also this is my love and my...
Yeah.
Someone's going to see this interview. Someone's going to read it. They're going to ask Reb Zalman. They're going to ask you. They're going to ask me.
Yeah.
They're going to ask, how does this coincide with what you did for the renewal movement?
Okay, that's the question. It's a good one.
One more question.
Yeah.
Did you, if you can, in 1940s or even maybe in the 50s, when you had a strong relationship, when you are
Yeah.
Chassidim a Chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's, did you at that time ever think that you're going to take this to a level and an experience that you did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s?
No, because remember, the Rebbe Rayaz was talking about the Vermdike Rabbonim, right?
The rabbis that were worms, that had worms within
that
them.
were worm-eaten.
Worm-eaten, corrupted.
Corrupted. So, and I was right behind that, But what happens is when you start outreach, then you have to, if you treat the people like they know nothing, you won't make any impact on them. If you find out what is it that they do know and then address what they do know, then you have an impact. So already in New Haven, when I was in yeshiva, there was a group of Israelis and other people, sort of Yiddish Kulturmenschen, with whom I would hang out from time to time. So I learned something from them. I came home once from New York on a late train to New Haven, and a guy sits with me who had just seen a show about Reb Nachman's Chassidim in Warsaw in the ghetto. Gewalt Jiden, seid doch nicht mehr Jaish, and so on and so forth. These were my buddies with whom I would hang out and have some kind of hashpoeh. The children of the yeshiva, on the other hand, I made up ditties for them. Fruit growing on the ground, like vegetables and roots. Borepri ha'adam is a bracha for such fruits, and for challah, and for matzah, and for wine. I had all these things for the kids at that time. So when you begin to pay attention to the people whom you want to influence, something from them comes into you. I can't say that the filter goes only one way, Something comes in. Dibra Torah v'loshen b'nei Adam. If I have to talk with the people in their language, I have to find out what the language is. That is what made me understand something about American Jews that most people don't quite get. I once had a geschäft with Moshe Feller.
Moshe Feller, the shliach in Minnesota.
I love that guy. He's wonderful. So he said to me, Zalman, you want to have the people get Ava B'Tanugim in one fell swoop? And I said, you're darn tootin'. Because the people who say, do tshuva tatoah first, and then I'll give you a shtickle Yiddishkeit, a shtickle Ruchnius, spirituality, do get your halachic life together first. But if you go the other way and you say, take hold of their yearning and the longing for God. And when you take hold of their longing and you give them tools like a niggin, like you want to do, you learned how to meditate from yogi so-and-so, good, I'll show you how to make your own talis and put in the tzitzis, and then you'll sit with this talis and do your meditation. And I would describe to them how to do that. And that was the first little booklet that I wrote called The First Step. And I brought it to the Rebbe, Ramash.
Yes.
He looked it over and said, Kedai, but you take out Buber. I had a bibliography in the back. He'd take out Buber, but he gave me a hechsher on that. and it was printed later on the first Jewish Catalogue and so on. My sense of outreach came, don't forget I told you I was in gymnasium and I learned Latin and all that kind of stuff. So in Vienna, and music and psychology and all that stuff is in the air there. So I wasn't just while I was in the yeshiva, I wanted to be a frummer bocher, you know?
Yes.
And I was, and that was my whole attention. But when I started to reach out to people, I wanted to find out what are their questions, where can I meet them, and where can I install in them something that they should feel that they exist nochach pnei Hashem.
Okay, but that's true as far as the people. The question that I'm really pointing at is you yourself.
So
the people I understand, you yourself.
But
how did you, in your mind, what were you thinking?
That's very simple. Once you take, you build a building, you have like a skeleton, scaffold. You take the scaffold down, then it's the building. Chassidus and Lubavitch is a great scaffold for Yiddishkeit. But when you look behind that, then you begin to ask some important questions. What is it about women? Where should they be? What's their place, And you look at Menucha Rochel, and you look at Varaleya, and you look at all the other people who were, they weren't nothing. And what was it that they had? When the Rebbe Rayatz describes that the halacha psukim, what to do on Shabbos when the Eruv was down, that they asked the woman what to do, and she is the one who gave
the ruling.
The rule. So the place of women was an important part. The other part is, now that the whole business of Baltashchis was, as far as the earth is concerned, the global thing. So I was concerned about that, but there was an in-between step. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, one scroll was called the Scroll of the War of the Children of Light against the Children of Darkness. And everything I could read about those people and the way they were looking for God was touching me a great deal. Then in the 50s, early 50s, I wrote an article, toured Qumran, USA, toured an order, a Jewish contemplative monastic urban order. And one of the things that I was worried about is that all the nuschoes are getting lost. Nobody today can give you the nusach of Rhineland. There was something very special about from the Balatoisevus on,
yes,
from Yerebe Yehuda HaChosid on, the Chside Ashkenaz. No, that's lost. And everything gets put in between Karlabach and Israeli army, and that nusach has become a big mishmash.
Hodgepodge.
And it's a pity, because I wanted to have us daven one year the Yemenite nusach, and 1 year to daven the other Eidos HaMizrach, and sometimes the Italian, so that these nuschos should not be lost. That was one part of that. Then each person should learn one derech, embody one derech. This one is our Musarnik, he's got Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, and this one has this, and this one has this, so that we make like a Noah's Ark of keeping these things going, and that we would work 8 hours in the Jewish community, and use 8 hours for working for our body, and 8 hours for Avodas Hashem a day. And I wrote this up, and I hoped that people would come to it. The only answer that I got was one guy who wrote me, "It won't happen, but it's a pity."
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, why are you saying all this? This is
because that was my transition point. You see, I was thinking no longer about Lubavitch as I was thinking about all these other nuschos, the other Eidos, and all that stuff that's going to get lost, and that it needed to have some place to be in. And everything that I learned in order to prepare for that, later on I was invited into summer camps. And I came to Camp Ramah, for instance. And there we did the business with the talesim, and kids wrote their mezuzahs on 3x5 cards and so. And I started to take these things not so serious that it has to be on cloth and it has to be this, because I felt that a kid that has written his own mezuzah and carved out his own shadel for the mezuzah and put on his door will know what a mezuzah is, you know?
Okay, so my question right there, let's take that as an example. How did you, in your mind, justify, you probably, you clapped mezuzahs, you knew the sacredness of a mezuzah, you knew what says Shulchan Aruch about a mezuzah, and here you came up with a very bright tool to reach out to the young children. How did you, in your mind, kind of depart? Because it is a departure from what you learned from 1941 to 1950, right? I mean, you were fully committed to a system.
Yeah,
I think so.
Tell you what, are you open to an answer?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I want to tell you.
Absolutely, I want to understand you.
Yeah.
Because people want to understand you. They might disagree, but they want to understand.
So I want to tell you something. If you daven, no matter how you daven, and you say Rabbeinu Shalom, it's you I'm serving. I'm not serving the Shulchan Aruch. What do you think I need to do for this time with these people, and what do you need tell me that I need to do for myself? Some people will say Narishkeit, he figures he has something to do. But I felt I lived a guided life that way, and it led me to these things. It led me to experience what psychedelics were, and to see what all these things that they're talking about, Oilimus and Yonim and so on and so forth, and what's the Aliyas HaNeshama, and I got to understand something much, much deeper. In this way, I felt that I had to go and be a scout and check out these things. And as I checked them out, I felt always I wanted to be in the presence of Hashem. Mm-hmm. I tell you a funny maise, but I'm not on the same level, but I like that maise a lot. There was a son of Chassid who traveled to the Sanza, and on his way back, he stayed for Shabbos with another Rebbe who asked him, "Why do you have to go to Sanz so far away? You can come to me, I can also teach you." He said, "Because in Sanz I learned how to read minds." He says, "So, read my mind." He says, you're thinking, Shivise Hashem lenegdi samid, I'm in the presence of God. He says, no, that's not what I was thinking. That's why I go to Sanz. Okay? So that's a very important part of that. You know, I don't think, when people look at Shlomo and they look at me and they figure, how come that I didn't stay within the lines? And the answer is, I don't think that I went out without being guided in a way. You are here. You see my poem. You see where I'm and how. So that this is not that I feel that I throw.
Did you have at that time when you went with this approach? Did you have any guilt at that time?
Of course, I still have. What are you talking about? I still have. You know. On the other hand, let's say when it comes Shabbos, and I drive over to Yisrael.
Do you mean the Shiner?
No, Rosenkranz.
I don't know, who was he?
Well, that's a whole other story. I don't want to go there.
Okay, yes.
And we learned Likutei Torah on Shabbos morning. So yes, shtickle guilt, no guilt. I couldn't walk there. You remember the wonderful story about the one who couldn't say shofar good. He said shofar. It was getting close to Yontif, and the horses were not yet in Yozhny, you know. And he says, and the guy says, we gotta stop. He says, no, sitting in the car is only a shvus, you know, but not to hear shofar, you know. There is that element that you see that, for me, the priorities kept on changing. Things that bring you closer to Hashem are more important. And let me tell you, one of the psychological things comes from Freud, but it's very important. A baby is called in the oral stage. It likes to eat, to suck from the mother, and so on and so forth, and is very happy with that. And the baby goes to a place later on where it has to be clean, use the potty. It's called the next stage. And then the kid learns how to be really clean, very tight, and so on and so forth. And then you get to another stage that's called the phallic stage, and everything then is more symbolic. And then you get to the stage where every chaverim, the most important thing is you and your chaverim. And then you get to a place where you can have intimacy. Freud. So I heard from this guy who said, it's the same thing with religion. You get started in it and then you feel, oh, it's so sweet, it is milk and honey, I want to be that, and then later on the discipline comes, and some people get stuck in the milk and honey, and then they can't get more milk and honey from this Rebbe, they go to the other Rebbe. Then there's some people who get stuck on the level of discipline. Like this guy says, in what are you nizar? What are you careful about? So this chassid said, I'm careful about yellow cucumbers. You know that story. Yeah, so like saying because they're bitter, right? So that's not the point. But then comes the thing that every time I do something, I see what is leading to l'shabbat hamayach ve'alev. I'm going to put the tefillin on, and my heart and my arm is going to be in the service of God, and everything is symbolic. And then it gets to the place, symbol shmimble, somebody is hungry, you got to help him out, and you go into that other phase. But there's still another phase when it is the one to the one, like you said, Yochid. And I made a little niggun. Echad Yochid Umeyuchad. Echad Yochid Umeyuchad. One, only one, all together one. One, only one, all together one. And you sing this with people, and that gets into a place. And so if I want to say whatever successes I've had with people, it is because I was in touch with that, and they were in touch with that through me, and that's the difference.
Did you believe during that period when the Rebbe Rayatz was speaking about La'alta Ge'ul, La'alta Tshuva, immediate redemption, immediate repentance will bring immediate redemption, did you actually believe that he will be the Messiah, the Mashiach?
The strange thing was that I expected that the Rebbe Ramash would be the Mashiach.
Then?
Even then. Let me tell you a story about that. Because if you look at the Hakriya V'Akdusha, the first issue, it has the Shir HaGeula.
Yes.
And if you read up, like the signs point up, it is Bias Meshechenu Behei Tov Shin Gimel Im Yas Hashem. You can check that out.
I will believe that.
Okay. So it is Chai Elul Tov Shin Gimel, and there is a big Chagiga in one of the wedding halls on Eastern Parkway.
Yes.
Soloveitchik is there, gives a great speech and holds up the Rebbe's hand and says, help this hand, and so on. It was very beautiful. Soloveitchik telling, and I'm standing on my tiptoes waiting for the Rebbe to say the word about the Geula, and it doesn't happen. And you can imagine how when it started the Rosh Hashanah Tov Shin Dalet, I was heartbroken about that. It was sad. But at the same time, I had the sense that when I went for Tashlich, and we came to Prospect Park, and it was locked, and the Rebbe climbed over, and behind him all the others climbed over. No better Mashiach than that. But I also got to see some very beautiful human sides. I once wanted to sort of get broiges with him already and say, I came up with 3 projects, and he said no to them. So I was going to be broiges with him. Then he comes into Daven Maariv, and he's coughing, and I see the Mesiras Nefesh of every step of the way of this man. And I got to Yechidus, and I say to him, so these ideas are not what you think I should do. Then I want to do Mesiras HaRotzen. Then I don't mind. You program me, I'll be your zombie, you know? I'll go where you send me. And he said, Mesiras HaRotzen is doch toit. It's like being dead. So I said, yeah, but you don't make any mistakes, and you always do the right thing. But what? Then he says, what joy does God have from that? On the average, you'll do more good than bad. And so every time he bought me, you know, that was that. Or later on, years later, when he calls me in, Yud Beis Tammuz, and he says, Mishulem Zalman HaKoyen is the Hillel director. Is he here? And I was outside with somebody. So they call me in. And the Rebbe says, Efshe is gegangen auf a retreat, Efshe hat gemacht a meditation. He's making fun of them.
Yes.
I come in, and he says, drink l'chaim for a retreat and one for the meditation, capo grande. He said to me in Italian. So I take, and I say l'chaim, and he's looking at me like so, and doesn't answer. L'chaim twice, doesn't answer. Then he says, no, say l'chaim. I can't say, hey, man, you're spaced out, you know. So I take another glass, and they fill it up this time with straight whiskey. The first two were vodka. And the third one, I had to take wine because there was no more around in the neighborhood. So you can imagine these 3 cups of schnapps and a cup of wine on top of that, and it explodes in my head. And he says, L'chaim, you should have a good retreat and a good meditation. He goes, yai, dai, dai, dai. And they start dancing, and I start jumping like a marionette at that point. Later on, when I took my LSD, and just as it was coming on, I see him again saying, L'chaim, you should have a good retreat and a good meditation.
Later on, meaning at the same occasion or another occasion?
Two weeks later, I got to do LSD the first time.
Yes, this was Timothy Leary?
Huh?
Together with Timothy?
With Leary, yes.
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 And so you were back in 770?
No, not for that.
Oh, but you saw his vision?
Yeah, sure. It came in, so have a good retreat, have a good meditation.
I either saw this on YouTube or I read, and I wanted to verify that with you, that, again, either you were quoted or you said, I don't remember, and I wanted to verify with you since I'm here, that you believed that he gave you the green light to do that. Is that true?
I tell you, yes, I did believe that. And
because I question it.
Well, you can question Gesundheit.
No, I'm asking.
I tell you what, you open a door into a very risky place. But from what I had read about it, and from what I had understood about it, I felt that it was a corroboration of everything that I learned in Chassidus would happen at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't, if he had said no, I would have still not listened.
Right.
But I felt empowered.
But he actually told you?
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't tell you.
All he said to have a good retreat, have a good meditation.
Okay, fine.
That's all.
So it was your interpretation of what he said, that whatever I was going to do on the retreat and in the meditation and in whatever manner I was going to do it, being that he is a holy person, then I guess he...
You don't make it so billig. It was much stronger. It was much... Do you understand when you say a retreat? Doing a retreat means to go deep inside of yourself.
Yeah.
And having a good meditation means that you really want to be in touch. Look at the word hasoge. You reach it, you touch the thing, and you become one with it. I think I've got to stop. My koyach is going out. Just let me finish something about renewal, okay? I started out with the thing that I heard from the Rebbe in Marseille.
Yes.
And there's something about the shift in time that's very important. Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni is Korbanos. That has to do with Olam. That's to say, Mokem Asher Yivcha is in Olam. And then it gets to be in Shana. Those are the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And now it is in Nefesh. And just as Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had to make a fantastic shift in his day, it was a paradigm shift. No longer Korbanos. What was Yiddishkeit going to look like? He starts with 5 disciples only. And out of Yavne, So I had the same feeling that this is necessary for now. That after Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Auschwitz, Birkenau, the moonwalk, the web, a new way has to be done, so that the white letters of the Torah, as Rav Levi Yitzchak points out in one of his teachings, have to come out, that up to now, and that we have to live Hilchese Limeshiche, as if Mashiach was here already, that this is the halacha that's going to lead us to Mashiach. So I didn't feel so strong about halacha as I felt about the whole business of Kirvas Elokim. And once you get that, fine, some people will say, yes, Shabsat also thought like this. So I gave a whole set of lectures about why renewal is not Sabbatianism, based on the issue of Eitz Chaim and Eitz Adas in the Igeres HaKodesh that the Alter Rebbe has written, and is built on the Raya Mehemne, and pointing out that it's not because we want to throw the thing away. We want to be loyal to what comes down min hashamayim now, because there's a big difference between if you go Al Torah should be Yodenu, it all came from Moshe Sinai, as if no change. But here is where I go with the Ishbitzer who says Zechor Yimei Soilom. That is the stuff that's kaima, that's always. And Bino Shnois Dovada, you have to understand the changes that go on in every generation. And it's very clear that every Rebbe was speaking to his generation and to the mind stuff that was going on at that time. So, and one of the things, ich shem sich nicht to tell you this, there's a story about the Ishbitzer as he's about to leave the Kotzke. And Reb David, the Kotzke son, comes over and says, give me Letzgeld, give me a... so he goes into his pocket, takes out some money, and a couple of kvitlach fall down. And he says, you become a Rebbe already? You're taking kvitlach? And the Ishbitzer says, what do you think I came to learn from your father? Be a shoemaker? I didn't come to Rebbe's to learn how to be a shoemaker.
I have a few more short questions.
Okay.
I understand what you said.
Okay.
Have you groomed a successor for the renewal movement after 180 years of your life?
If I were to tell you, it wouldn't be true. And if I said no, that would also not be true. And the rest of it is up to me.
Okay.
Okay.
The next question is, can you, if you were to come out with an announcement, and maybe you've done, I don't know, but if you were to come out with an announcement for the renewal movement, for example, to put on tefillin every day, certain mitzvahs maisias that should kind of hit home, in addition to the ecology and the renewal and everything else that we've spoken about.
Why do you think this isn't so?
I'm asking, I don't know.
So, have you ever seen the Jewish Catalogue?
I've seen it years ago.
So I was the source of the Jewish Catalogue, because the students who did the Jewish Catalogue were my students at Brandeis, and some of the stuff was term papers. And that little first step of how to be misbeinen is in the back of the first catalog. So in there, how to put on film, how to make tzitzis, and so on. I believe that the pshat of uchtavtam alone, that a person should write it himself, is very important. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy other mezuzahs, but I believe that at least one mezuzah a person should write himself, even if it's on paper.
Well, but I understand that, but my question is, again,
do I come out with Shmiras HaMitzvos? Of course.
Do you believe that the renewal movement, the people on the street, all the people that come to the retreats, and do they walk away with a sense that Reb Zalman wants us to do this? That's my question. That's a very important.
So I tell you something, it doesn't go this way. If it goes this way, I learned something from Zalman that takes me a little bit closer to Hashem, and I made up my mind that I will start keeping Shabbos a little more seriously. Or I made up my mind that I'll keep kashrus more seriously. Or I made up my mind that from now on I'll not be a kakaf to the Lomarach film. When I teach people how to do the weekday davening, and here in the renewal shul, I would do that and show them how to put on the tefillin and to really pay attention. Sometimes I teach them how to put on tefillin. I say, and I don't want you to daven, I just want you to sit and learn from the tefillin. What do the tefillin teach you? You see, if in short, I would say I begin with the experiential side. That takes roots in a person's soul. And then the likelihood is that somehow something of Elokus is going to come in and take that person further.
Mm-hmm. After the Ramash, the Rebbe passed away in 1994 in Gimel Tammuz, what were your feelings, your thoughts? Briefly,
Yeah. After the heart attack, I was very sad that the Rebbe didn't take in, you asked me a question about succession, that the Rebbe didn't take in Yoel Khan and some of the other people and teach them how to learn a kvittel and teach them how to also go to the Ohel. If that's his Rebbistve, doing the homework at the Ohel, take some people and show them how to do that. He didn't do that. On the other hand, he did a stroke of genius because he took charisma and created franchises. And they covered out the globe. And I think that's a lot more American than the thought that I had. Everywhere they're there. But I want to say I'm sad that so many of the people who are shlichim are not Chabad Hasidim, but are Nehi Hasidim. Right? They know good Netzachot Yesod. They give very good with that. But when it comes to, they have a nusach that sometimes is stupid nusach. When I hear some of the things that shlichim have taken on, they're not sophisticated. If I had my druthers what to do, I would give up all kinds of other things if I could run a seminar with shlichim and tell them how to do it more sophisticated.